Hello, and welcome to Arts and Entertainment.
With Chris and Randall.
I'm Chris,
I'm Randall.
and welcome to the show. We've been, I know, away for a bit. I have been doing a lot of extracurricular activities. Sorry about that. We are going to be back for the next 2 weeks. We may take another week off. I'm not sure, but we'll definitely get back into the swing of things soon. I promise. But now that we're in our second year, Randall, we are now we're having some traditional shows. So this is our Super Bowl halftime show slash commercial show where we review the halftime and the commercials. We did this a year ago, and we're doing it this year, and hopefully we can do it next year. But before we get into the show, as always, please like, subscribe, share, comment. We really want to know, what do you think? Is there any other stuff that we did last year that you want us to come back and do again? Or is there some new things you want us to do? Hey, Randall, what's a decent way to reach out to us?
Well, go to our website first, chrisandrandall.com, and you'll find various ways to subscribe and get in touch with us there. Also, our Facebook page is lively if you're on Facebook.
I like that word. It is live, and we are always there, and we're always alive on Facebook. I don't know why I said that. It's funny. It's Super Bowl 56. Randall, do you know how I always know what Super Bowl year it is?
How?
Because the first Super Bowl occurred 1 month after I was born. So the Super Bowl and I are always roughly the same age.
You and the Super Bowl are the same age. And I just want to say before
56-year-olds.
I just want to say too, before we get into the show, some people might say, "Oh, a show about arts and entertainment, talking about the Super Bowl halftime show and the Super Bowl commercials, and why are they doing that?" Well, I made the contention last year when we first did it that the Super Bowl is probably the most important arts show in the entire world, probably in the history of the world, at least in terms of money spent and effort going into it and the amount of eyeballs on it. I mean, there's never ever been a bigger art showcase, and there isn't for the rest of the year. So
that is an excellent point. In fact, did you know, Randall, that this year in the U.S. alone, 112 million people watched the Super Bowl. Viewership was up by 16%.
Wow, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's 1,000 years from now, if humans are still around, they'll look back, at this stuff, and they'll try to make judgments about our culture and civilization based on the Super Bowl.
The interesting thing about the Super Bowl really is that, it's easy. You don't have to be a sports fan to watch the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is that day where like, I don't know anything about football, but I'm going to watch. And for Randall and I, it was much easier this year because it was a hometown team, the LA Rams, and the Super Bowl was here, in LA. So, Randall and I, we got together. He picked me up at my apartment. We drove down to SoFi Stadium. We got, we didn't get the best seats, but, we got some seats. We had some hot dogs and soda. And, it was a real fun day, wasn't it, Randall?
Chris, why are you lying, Chris? Why are you lying? We never go to the Super Bowl, Chris. We've never been to the Super Bowl. It costs thousands of dollars.
I know. It's sad because you think about it. Like in the abstract, it's like, oh, well, the Super Bowl's in LA. And it's very rare that it's an actual home team that plays. Like, it's in LA. Like in a better world where either everything is cheaper or you and I are gajillionaires, this would have been a thing. It's what? We could have gotten some $5,000 tickets up in the nosebleed seat.
I don't know. I don't know how much the tickets were, but yeah, it's like it's astronomically high. I mean, the average LA person cannot afford to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, not at all.
Have you been to SoFi Stadium yet?
No.
Have you? I have not, but, and this is really important, kind of but. I love going to Manhattan Beach, which is in this part of Los Angeles called the South. And when you take the freeway, which is what we call a highway, but we don't have to pay for the tolls because we're Californians. Why would we ever do that? You can see SoFi Stadium, and it is a fascinating rectangular piece of silver. Like you look at it, and it looks like a very menacing ship from Star Trek, or no, it looks more like a space station from Star Trek.
It's a new venue, right? I mean, they built
It's
it
a
like.
brand new venue. It was built what 5 years ago when we repurchased the LA Rams,
Hmm.
and that's the
Yeah,
thing. I mean, like there's a lot of newness. LA went how many years? Went 20 years without a football team?
a while. Yeah, a while.
About 20 years, and we didn't have a football stadium. So we got back the team we lost, the LA Rams, and we built this giant new football stadium, and we chose to build it where the land is theoretically cheapest, which is Inglewood.
Well, the for years, when LA did have a professional football team, they played what is it, the Coliseum, right? Which
Right, which
was a stadium built. It's near downtown LA. It was built for the Olympics, like in what 1911 or 10 or
yeah.
something. So LA really didn't have a stadium, and then the Rams left partly because the stadium they hated it so much. The rumor is, and then they came
So
back after we built
I,
another stadium.
what is really interesting, and there's a reason why, folks, I'm talking about this. Isn't just like why it's pissed on, but so the southern part of Los Angeles County, the coastal area, we call that, South Bay, and it's got places like Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach. When you think of the Beach Boys, you think of the South Bay. But if you go inland to that same part of LA, you're in South Central. And I don't mean that like, oh, you're in a bad neighborhood, but you're in like places like where SoFi Stadium, which is like Inglewood, which is near Compton, which is near, where else is it near Randall?
Inglewood, Compton, Long Beach.
Torrance,
Sure. But
Hawthorne.
what? Yeah, sure.
So back in the 90s, this was really like the birthplace of West Coast hip hop. In fact, Randall, weren't you living like near there, like around Florence?
Well, I lived in Torrance for a while. Yeah, I mean, it's like this area, like Inglewood, Torrance, Lawndale. It's like a giant Compton, Watts. I mean, it's like a giant suburb. It's just
Yeah. And
sprawl.
I think for people who aren't from here, they think it's all ghetto, where in fact it's really just a mixture of just about every socioeconomic group. It's not even entirely all African American. It's got a fairly large representation of Hispanics in the Hispanic community. Actually, I taught in South Central about 20 years ago. So, but what you know of it, and what is probably its great legacy, is that it is in many ways the birthplace of West Coast hip hop.
Well, I mean, that's where Inglewood. That's Dr. Dre, NWA came out of there, right?
Yeah, and
Compton.
Snoop Dogg,
Snoop
and
Dogg's from Long Beach, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
LBC, and is Mary Blige part of that? Is she from that, or is she
I
just
don't
part
know
of?
where Blige is from. I kind of thought Blige was from the East Coast, but I can't remember now.
And Fitty, he is from where?
I think he is from the East Coast as well. Let me look it up,
Yeah,
but I don't
and
remember.
whereas and Eminem is from Detroit, but Eminem was discovered by Dre, and Dre was very instrumental in the careers of 50 Cent or 50 Cent, as they like to call him. And anyway, the reason I'm getting into this is that, and
Blige is from the Bronx.
oh, she's a local girl. I should know this. Oh my God, she and Cardi B, among others, are from the Bronx. Rep East Coast, represent. Uh, my bad. Hey, keep on listening. My point is this: the theme of this Super Bowl halftime show was really rooted in the history of the hood neighborhoods that abut SoFi Stadium, and I love that. Didn't you? I mean, that this. I don't. I've never seen a Super Bowl in a place where I live. We watched a lot of halftime shows last year to research, and I don't think I've ever seen a Super Bowl show that had such a sense of place and history in that.
Yeah, they're literally the floor of the field was literally a giant map. I'm assuming of Compton. I think
Did you
Dre
recognize Tams?
Tams. Yeah, there's this there's a fast food place called Tams that was recreated as part of the stage. Yeah, the stage was a recreation of a city block Compton probably, and
Yeah,
then you have the
with
map of Compton in the bottom. And it was yeah. So I mean, there's a well, in Dre's music, in the music of a lot of these performers, they're constantly referring to Compton, Inglewood, Long Beach, the places they're from. Um, I don't think 50 Cent and Blige. I'm not sure if there's. I mean, Eminem for sure.
well, that's the thing. I mean, West Coast hip hop, which is really the birthplace area. Now it's always name checks places. There's the Club Eve, which they recreate, which is where Dre got his break. There's a donut place that mock. They make a mock version, recreate. I mean,
we're getting off on a weird tangent here, but
no, we're talking about the aesthetics.
But now you're getting me thinking. Like, why do you think these particular performers are so tied to a certain geography? I feel like it's a very like hip hop, rap, R&B kind of thing. Like Jennifer Lopez had a single, Jenny from the Block, right?
Another Bronx girl made good.
Right. So she's like, in the song, she's like, it's the quintessential, I'm a big star now and I travel all around the world performing, but I'm still just like a girl from the Bronx. And
without actually really doing a whole East Coast, West Coast history of hip hop, which we'll probably have to get to one day, what I really just want to point out is that last year, the Weeknd did a really good conceptual show. We talked about how what made that show really work is that there was a unifying idea. Like traditionally, halftime shows have been really like very disappointing variety shows, right? Like it's basically like listening to top 40 radio. There's like an artist that the young people like. There's an artist that the old people like. There's fireworks. Each singer has their own aesthetic, but it isn't really a full, complete event. It's spectacle without a central idea. And I remember we talked about how the Weeknd, and I think the Weeknd did like the closest thing we'll probably ever see to a concept halftime show.
Right, and he was only able to do that because of COVID, because the stadium was kind of bare, right?
Yeah, he had to basically take advantage of the fact that there was no one actually at the halftime show. So he took what would have been a problem and he made it into a whole aesthetic. But I will say that to me, Dre really engineered another concept show. And I think that this could have easily been an oldie show. And if you want to we can talk about it later. In some sense, it is an oldie show. But by just the visual elements of using cars, the dancers, the costumes, the way they laid out, how would you describe those trucks that had those sets inside of them?
Oh, you're talking about the stage that looks like a neighborhood? Well,
one has its own substage where each of the different singers perform.
The stage was like a mock-up of buildings, neighborhood buildings, and then inside the buildings were additional stages. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was.
And Dre is like almost like a maestro because throughout it we always see him working the mix.
Yeah,
which I assume he's really doing.
I don't think so. I felt like the whole thing was what do you call it, lip synced. I doubt anybody was actually making a sound like in the performance.
All right, because it looked to me like Dre was actually he was playing piano later on.
I think well, it would be interesting to know if he really was, but I think that he was doing a really good performance at pretending to be mixing.
Well.
Which was very convincing looking. It was. Well, the guy, he knows how to mix. Dre is one of the greatest music producers of all time. I mean, of course.
I do believe he is definitely playing piano. So let's go through the whole set list.
Well, he knows how to play piano, but I don't think like the piano sound was.
Yeah, that's not that hard to do.
Source.
Well,
maybe
because it's not. You don't need. It's not singing. The reason why you do dubbed singing is because it's hard to get the voice clear. And it's hard to get a good
right. Of course.
voice.
There's the technical reason why you don't want to do that.
Right. The piano is an instrument that you can, or keyboards in general, are just the nature of it. They can be engineered to be played, which is why they're often the most played thing. And I also believe Anderson .Paak were really playing their instruments, and we'll get into that in a moment. But let's just start off with the opener, which is, and what a cool. This is what the Weeknd did. Come up with a song that really ushers in the show. and take a song we already know, like the next episode with Snoop, and just it almost kind of introduces, I would argue, the whole theme, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it set the tone. I mean, it's a great song. Yeah.
And it is also what we're watching is the next episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then right into that, they go into California Love, which, again, it's that shout out, which is very common in West Coast. And also just an embracement that this is California's. I don't even remember the last time we had a Super Bowl. Do you?
Well, we're probably gonna have more now. Now that the Rams are in LA and stuff. We'll see.
So California Love is a really wonderful, with that opening sequence from Snoop to Dre, really kind of I felt like highlighted that hey, LA. Normally, I feel like the Super Bowl is often focused on the general audience and not the people in the actual stadium. But this time, I felt like it was a real shout out to the people in the stadium and to all of us here in LA. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was saying to people, "Go Rams!" And there's just a general feeling of excitement.
Yeah, I mean, well, all these people are like in this show are seasoned stage veterans. I mean, even like Lamar, somebody like that is like I'm sure he's got some years under his belt now, and like I mean,
We'll get to that.
they
Yeah.
know how to do a show in front of a live audience. Yeah, for
And
sure.
then they went into club with 50 cents. Now it's interesting because I, there's not a lot more of the halftime shows do have the singer do more interesting acrobatic things. But did you notice how they opened up with him upside down?
Yeah, well, I think he was hiding in the roof of the set, and then he popped down when it was his cue, and
Well, that's it's a reference to the original video.
right,
Where
exactly.
and it's kind of interesting because 20 years have gone by, and I know as a man in his 40s, Randall, would you want to be right now upside down?
Well, it just
But
shows, 50 Cent,
yeah,
he's hardcore, he's willing to do what it takes to deliver.
it definitely had I liked the small interior set on that one, and I really liked the energy. And in many ways, 50 is just fitting. Like it was really like watching the man from 20 years ago. And I felt like that was the most, to me, actually, that I think that might have been I think from a production standpoint, I think that was my favorite, like, production, was the remake
Yeah,
of
it was
it.
good. I mean, I was really struck by how they had just a bunch of dancers, especially in that segment. They had just a bunch of dancers in street clothes, and you usually don't see that. You usually don't see such an eclectic mix like that of costumes at the Super Bowl. And there was their clothing, their costumes didn't seem special at all. They really seemed like ordinary clothes, and it really worked. It was fun and exciting, and
Yeah,
I mean, whoever did the choreography, I mean, it's probably multiple people, but whoever did the choreography for this show, they all did a great job.
then Mary J. Blige comes on. She actually is one of the few people who gets two songs, Family Affair and No More Drama. I've always liked No More Drama. Family Affair is just an okay song. I would say the best I can say is for a woman of 51, she's really well put together, and she really, I mean, to me, I wish I felt like I would have liked some more visual accompaniment. Like as a song, it's fine. As a performer, it's wonderful, and it's good to see her. But I just didn't feel like it was as visually compelling as it could have been. What was your take on that?
Well, I did notice that Blige's performance got a little bit more traditional, with dancers are all wearing the same kind of costumes, and she was just, dancing as if on a stage. I mean, it was probably like a recreation of a
Yeah,
tour.
but it felt almost like every other Super Bowl halftime show. When J Lo hosts, or
Right.
when Mariah hosts, or like it's, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's perfectly fine, but in a show that felt so what otherwise different, to me, I wish they had spent a little more time figuring out.
Right. She went the
I
traditional route, and 50 Cent went the most creative route where he
Yeah,
said, I would have loved to have been in the room when that came up. I wonder whose
yeah,
idea it was. Hey,
yeah,
how about I hide? How about I hide in the roof and then
yeah.
come out upside down? What?
But Kendrick Lamar, who I'm not as familiar with, he is the youngest by 20 years, but apparently he had not performed in 5 years, so he was the one that people had the most. I have to admit, I really choreography wise, that one Mad City,
Yeah,
where that was great.
fun, very fun. Yeah.
It was fun. I like how they all had dyed blonde hair. I liked how the choreography played from an aerial view. That did remind me a little bit of The Weeknd in the
Yeah, it
way
was it
he.
was field show esque. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yes. It was field show esque, drumline esque. Uh, it had a great energy. I was originally thinking because I didn't know Kendrick Lamar, is he going to be up to that same standard? And I thought visually it was really quite creative, and he really held his own.
Well, I'll say this. At least in Southern California, I was in marching band in Southern California. I did field shows in high school, and there's a lot of hip hop people who do marching band. Because it's music, and they want to learn how to play music. And I know a lot of these people. They were probably a marching band. They probably did field shows, or at least they
Yeah.
saw them. I mean. I know that there was that duo. Oh God, what's their name now? I can't remember their name, but they were big for a while. They were big producers. Oh gosh, I can't remember them. They came out of field shows. If I remember
Oh
the name,
wow.
I'll say it.
Yeah. And what was kind of interesting was, I mean, if I do think that the slickest, tightest production was in the club, but as far as creativity and just an interesting use of space and people and concept, I really have to admit, I think Kendrick Lamar's performances, both of Mad City and All Right, were excellent. And then how it seamlessly, because they all had Happy Dre Day.
I don't know
And
exactly what that meant.
I don't know, but it went great when they got into Forget About Dre, when
Right.
everybody, when Lamar and Eminem and Dre get together, and they're just a very, like, it builds, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, I mean, yes, there's something really much better. There's The Weeknd really was a full story, whereas here it was still, in fairness, more a tribute to West Coast or 90s hip hop. But I feel like when you go from like All Right, Forget About Dre, you get to Lamar, you get to the three guys, and then that like, big explosion, and then here's Eminem. It does feel very like there's a real forward motion. And for me, energy wise, I definitely thought the most exciting for me, probably because I'm a 56-year-old white man, is was Eminem.
I didn't know you're a big Eminem fan. I didn't know this, Chris.
Well, I can relate better to him. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't know what you're saying. Do you want to just leave it
I,
there?
I'm gonna leave it there. Like I can sing Eminem in the shower without doing any cultural appropriation. I will admit I am getting kind of tired of Lose Yourself. I think he
Really?
did it. He did it at the Oscars 3 years ago, and I did post then, and it's like for Eminem, Eminem always says he got one shot. So, but apparently 2003, 2018, and 2022, that shot keeps on coming back.
I don't know. That song is so amazing. I mean, I always get the chills when I hear the beginning
Yeah, of
notes.
course.
I mean, it's such an amazing song. I mean, I don't know if it could be topped. I mean, it's it's
No, and
amazing.
that's the thing. It almost demands its presence, and I felt like the energy on that was definitely the best I thought of the whole performance. I mean,
Well, it's the
especially when the crowd,
climax.
yeah, and when the crowd rushes. I wish it had been the climax.
I don't think that was a crowd. That was just dancers, I think, running up.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But the dancers rushed them like a crowd.
Right, right. Yeah, that was a
And for
wonderful
a
piece.
moment, I was scared.
That was a wonderful. See, that's another example of a striking, wonderful piece of choreography. I don't know who's choreographing this show, but yeah, again, hats
Yeah,
off
that
to these
actually
people.
that might have been the best choreography of the show, because well, if it was, it was certainly one of the better ones, because the choreography I really felt in this one, again, the weekend was so good, but this one also, I don't want to. There has to be other shows that are good besides the weekend's halftime show, and I really felt like this one.
Well, we agreed that Katy Perry's was the best, but
Yes,
but the
for
weekends is a close second.
but there's a difference. It's easier for Katy Perry in the weekend because they're one performer, whereas here, of all the halftime shows I've ever seen, this was the best at seamlessly integrating all the performers. Yes, it's true that Dre has been involved aesthetically with all of these people, but it also like everyone felt like they belonged. They were a team. You know what I'm saying? On an event that celebrates teams, didn't you feel like
Well,
they were
all
both
these
separate
performers,
and together?
yeah, you get the sense all these performers, you get the sense that they probably do, but you get the sense that they don't really have big egos. You know, they have some degree of humility. They just want to entertain you. You know, they're willing to do what it takes. I mean, 50 Cent hiding in the roof. That
Yeah.
was great, you know.
Well, what about that explosion to reveal Eminem?
Oh, I know Eminem. I don't know where Eminem was hiding, but he's, you know, he had to go through something to get
Yeah.
that. He had to go through a trap door or something. I mean, you know, it's like
And then there
they're
was
all
again,
bringing
it
it.
was
They're
a
all
sense
working.
of heritage and tradition because I like, Tupac, had he lived, he would have been there. Tupac so representative of the West Coast. In fact, right not too far away in downtown LA right now, there is actually a Tupac
You know,
immersive exhibit.
I'll
So
say
they
something
did
about
Dre did a cover of Ain't Mad at You.
yeah, I'll say something about Tupac. You know, I think one of the reasons Tupac keeps coming up and they keep like they literally brought him back from the dead. Remember when they had a Tupac
Yeah.
hologram for like some concert, some festival?
Yeah, yeah.
But they keep. I think the reason because I used to like Tupac. I listened to Tupac when he came out, and you know the thing about Tupac is there's not really an artist like Tupac. You know, even today, you know he was in the hip hop rap area, but that genre. But his music was very I don't know. I guess the best word for it is sensitive. He had some
No, but you're
very
right. Yeah, and that's why
sensitive lyrics.
I like how Dre actually played piano. Like that was a nice choice. Just like I liked how Anderson Paak backed Eminem for "Lose Yourself" because we don't normally think of "Lose Yourself" as being backed by a rock band. We don't normally think of "I Ain't Mad at You" with piano. So I really liked how, and this really speaks to Dre, I think, as a producer, that many of these songs had new subtlety and nuance, and it wasn't entirely just here's how the song sang before. We're gonna do it
Right.
exactly the
Well,
same.
Dre's musical sense is like is perfection all the time. I mean, the guy's a one of the greatest musical geniuses of all time, probably. I mean, you
And
can't
it
fault
definitely
him.
it was on display because just the climax, which could be very egomaniacal, which is still Dre, which is clearly the answer to forget about Dre, and in it of itself does provide the mildest of what I would call a narrative motif. Uh, but that is a group song, bringing everyone back out: Dre, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, 50 Cent, Kendrick Lamar, and Eminem. That was very exciting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fun. It was great. I
I mean,
mean,
that's what I mean.
they know how to bring a show. These people.
That's kind of the thing that I always feel like that doesn't work. Like I still remember watching Britney Spears and what's his face from Aerosmith,
Yeah, Steven Tyler.
right? And they were doing a duet,
Yeah, people
and
didn't
I
like
was
that.
like, no, because in general, I always feel like it's a forced, like it's all right, one generation's music and another's so they did something here that a lot of controversy has happened, which is about the millennial Gen X war. So uh, Snoop's 50, Mary J. Blige is 51, Eminem is 49, 50 Cent is 46. So, the exception of Kendrick Lamar, they're all Gen Xers.
Well, what happened was CNBC or NBC or somebody on their Twitter account tweeted out something like a picture of the Super Bowl show and said something like, "Wow, the Super Bowl show for the millennials" or something like that. I should look it up.
Yeah,
But and then instantly a bunch of Gen X people got on and were like, "All these performers just about are Gen X."
yeah. And that was the funny part. And there's been a lot of memes. And my sister posted one and I loved it. It's like the NBC promo photo showing all of these people. And, they're all more prominent than Kendrick Lamar. And underneath, it's like, if you recognize all of these singers, then it's time for you to arrange a colonoscopy.
Probably. Well,
Well,
you know,
I mean, guys out there and ladies out there, yeah. If you're in that age group, please, seriously, I'm not joking. Now is the time to set up an appointment for a colonoscopy. I mean, Snoop, Mary J. Blige, soon Eminem. Those three right off the bat can be on the cover of AARP. Did you even? I mean, like that's a very how do I say that? I mean, and again, this is going to be a whole other show we'll do one day. But do you? I've often felt if you really look at the artists of any generation, like look at the age of the Rolling Stones versus their fans, look at the age of Duran Duran versus their fans, look at the age of whoever you like. I always feel like half of all pop singers are about they normally tend to belong to the Big Brother generation. You know what I'm saying? There's like a
Yeah,
little
they're
bit of
usually about 5 to 10 years older, I would say.
yeah, they're just part of the Big Brother, and so their influences are like 10 years. So basically, the way I look at pop music is that whatever you grew up listening to when you were a teenager or even younger, when you become a musician, that's going to influence you. But you're probably not going to break until you're in your 20s. So you're normally going to be like at the height of your fame, probably around your late 20s, early 30s, playing music by people who at that point in history are either in their 40s or 50s, or people in their teens. So if you kind of look at rap music, it's about 40 years old now, right? Let's say Rapper's Delight, 1979, that's the beginning of rap. So we're like 43 years. So these guys and gals, they're my age. They grew up with the first wave of hip hop. West Coast hip hop, as we now talk about it, really starts in the 90s, which many of those people really are the groundbreaking pioneers of. And now it's like, which middle age group are you looking at? Like millennials, I guess they said that this was people's music who were born between 85 and 95, but performed by people who were born mostly in the 70s. I mean, you and I are both Gen Xers. I'm what's called a cusper because I'm closer to boomers and you're closer to these people. So like, I guess what, in the 90s, you were what, in your teens and 20s?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I was a teenager and in college when these people were hitting it big.
Yeah.
I remember. I
And
think I could have been either junior or senior in high school when The Chronic came out. I remember it was
okay.
like '93 or something. It was like almost the same year that The Chronic and Nevermind came out. It was like an amazing year for music.
Yeah.
And I'm looking up the Beatles, their ages, and they were born. Let me tell you, the Beatles were born in 1940, 1942, 1943.
So they're
1940. So they were all. So the Beatles were not baby boomers.
they were neither
They
they were
were.
right. Exactly.
And I was reading. It's interesting. I was reading some other book, a sociologist, I think, a sociology book, and they were talking about like a lot of the baby boomer heroes. Okay, you're talking about like the Beatles, musicians. You're talking about like Timothy Leary, the LSD guru. I mean, these people were born before 45, so almost, it's like it was like all those people were born slightly before the generation that idolized them, which
So that's
which
what,
apparently is
yeah,
not uncommon. Okay.
exactly. So people who are born like 85 are pushing, people born in 75 are pushing 50. People born in 85, you guys are pushing 40. People born in 95, your kids pushing your mid 30s. And people like me, we're pushing 60. And I feel like there is a new generation of post boomer middle aged people, and that's Gen Xers, millennials, and especially late millennials. And I really feel like while watching this show, it dawned on me like, oh darn, this is an oldie show. Like we may not think of it as an oldie show, but 20 years ago when they had Bob Dylan and Paul McCartney and Bruce Springsteen are like, oh, that's such boomer music. That's for old people. Like, well, yeah, technically speaking, with the exception of Kendrick Lamar, this halftime show was for middle-aged people.
It is funny the reaction it got though. Like a bunch of people on Twitter saying, "Oh, this is a show for millennials." I mean, it's
But even millennials, even like those later millennials, you guys born in 85 to 90, you guys are getting up there, man.
I don't think of young kids today listening to these people. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but
No, young kids
Dre,
have,
Dogg,
no,
Snoop
of
Dogg,
course not.
Eminem.
This is not their world. And there was no, Kendrick Lamar was the only let's give it up for the young people. But, in a sense, Kendrick Lamar is like Adele. Like when your mom says that she likes Adele, that doesn't make her hip. That just makes her old. Like Adele is for you could be any age and like
Do you
Adele,
do
but
you think that it's possible this show was some kind of reaction to The Weeknd? Because The Weeknd is like this guy. Most of the old people have never heard of him.
yeah, I think so. And I think there is an instinct to go back to the boomers. And I think they realize, oh, the boomers are, no offense, my friends, you guys are like pushing 80. So, like your guys are not buying cars, you're not buying crypto, you're not, and and that starts segueing into commercials, right? So what were the commercials this year? We're talking about, there was a lot of crypto commercials, weren't there? That was new.
Well, it was
And
for mostly for products to help you trade crypto.
cars are always going to be a very big deal.
Well, I'll say something about the car commercials. You had a lot of electric car commercials, which I don't think I've seen
Yeah,
before.
right, exactly. So in one sense, there's a lot of like, whoa, now we're doing electric cars, and now we're doing crypto,
It's like the
and like,
future. It's like it's
yeah,
optimistic, Chris.
and now we're doing like hard seltzer as well as beer. So you're right, and like there's definitely just kind of like the show. There's some very old stuff going on in the commercials, and there's some very new stuff. Now, I do want to say last year's commercials were very reflective of their time, and I feel like sometimes this year's commercial, all commercials tell us something about who we are in a time period. And so we picked 5 commercials each that we liked, and I'm going to save my favorite for the very end. But then I think all the other ones I'll just go in whatever order. You want to save your very favorite from the end, and we'll just do everything else. So
Okay.
you go first, which was your first favorite?
Okay, so yeah, well, my number 5 pick was Jim Carrey as the cable guy. He Jim Carrey did this movie called The Cable Guy
Great movie.
with Matthew Broderick a long time ago. This is a movie for people our age, Chris. It's not a movie for like the young kids. It's not a movie for the
And you
boomers.
nailed it. It's a '90s movie that is clearly super Gen X.
All the critics when this movie came out hated the movie. The movie didn't do well in the box office. The only people who liked this movie were like people in our age category. I mean, because
Well, it was, I believe, Ben Stiller's follow up to Reality Bites. It was his first big
perhaps
budget film.
I
Big
can't
budget
remember.
film.
Yeah, it may have been.
His first studio film was the height of Jim Carrey's rising popularity. It was the first time I ever saw Jack Black.
Jack Black was a child star before this, but this was like a labor.
No, that's true, but it was the first time that he really had a lot of screen time. Is what I'm trying to say, not just doing cameo. Like, yeah, it's true. First time I saw him was Bob Roberts, and then Waterworld, but like he had a pretty juicy part. And then we forget one of the great Gen X superheroes, Matt Broderick, was the star of it. We forget that actually Jim Carrey was the villain of the Cable Guy.
Jim Carrey in this movie is doing a lot of ad libbing. He's doing a lot of he's improving a lot of his memories from just watching TV and movies over the years. But you'd have to grow up watching this stuff. I mean, I think I got every single reference he made in this movie in the Cable
We'll
Guy.
have to do another episode just on Cable Guy or movies like it. I will say that Jim Carrey at 60 looks a hell of a lot like Jim Carrey at 30.
Yeah,
When he
and
did Cable Guy.
his Cable Guy
Pretty
character.
impressive.
His Cable Guy character is really hilarious. He's like a giant nerd, and he's not ashamed to be that way. He's the nerd that looks down on other people for not being as smart as him. Not being
Yeah.
not being as quirky as him. And it's just a great character. And he comes in this commercial, and he's just amazed that somebody is not using cable. They're gonna go to like some 5G network instead of cable. And it's fun.
Well, but it's also indicative of what I think is a middle-aged person's show, right? We just did a tribute to the '90s music, and again, what not only do they do a '90s revival of Cable Guy, but they bring in Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. Great, we're literally bringing in
Austin Powers, yeah.
Because it's Mike Myers, you could have brought in Austin Powers, but no, it's Dr. Evil and his whole Legion of Doom, right? It's Seth, the Robert Wagner character, the Mindy Cohn's the head of on whatever. All of the bad people, are there except for the late Mini-Me, and I did not like it as much, strangely enough, as a Cable Guy. But yes, clearly
Well, Jim Carrey's performance is like, I mean, this character he does, the cable guy, is just one of the all-time greatest comedy characters, and uh,
It
you
is the
know,
first time I've seen though Mike Myers do live action comedy in over 20 years.
well, he's got that Shrek money. He doesn't have to work now, I think.
No,
But
but
Jim
it
Carrey
is.
doesn't have to work either.
No, none of these people have to work. So, and which is an interesting question. But again, it's another nail that lets you realize that the average viewer that they're trying to sell to are people between 35 and 60. That they're
Well,
really going after people of a certain income or time of life. So let me.
I don't think it's gonna last. I think we got 5 or 10 more years, and then it'll be
All right,
millennial
well,
everything.
one of the ones that I liked. It's a two-parter, but I just thought it was great. It was from BMW, which was Zeus and Hera, where Arnold Schwarzenegger plays Zeus, and Hera is played by Selma Hayek. And like any person of a certain age, and again, notice this is very subliminal. Like any person of a certain age, it's time to retire. So he retires like anybody out here in LA would. He moves to Palm Springs. Now, this is really interesting because in this one, I almost feel like this is almost boomer because, retirement is certainly a Gen X thing. I am now at the age where I'm thinking about retiring from Chris and Randall and living off of my royalties. But, as long as you want to do this show, Randall, I'll do it. But I do want to start playing golf in Palm Springs. We'll probably eventually, I'll move out there and you can come play some rounds with me. So my point is, Schwarzenegger is, again, a great, like Carrey, his fame was at its highest in the 90s. This is a guy that if you came of age in the 90s or the 80s, was just as big as can be. And Selma Hayek's ingenue career is pretty much the 90s and the early aughts. So it's not by accidental. These people have been cast. It's not the only commercial, by the way, where retirement was the theme. They did one about an astronaut who retires, who then can't retire because he's got to work for late because he didn't make good investments. But
There's a lot of financial commercials
right.
This
But
time
this
around.
is actually for that midlife crisis car.
Right.
Strangely enough, it's not about retirement. It's about how much more fun you can get in a BMW. And like every car commercial that we saw, save for one or two, like the majority of car commercials, and again, we'll eventually do an episode just on this. Where do they film 90% of all car commercials?
Where?
Flower Street in downtown LA. There's the Bonaventure and there's an elevated bridge. So right on that area, every car, it doesn't matter who the car maker is, they have to show the Bonaventure, they have to show downtown LA, and then they have to show that bridge, which is, by the way, also where every fight scene for every superhero, Marvel or DC as well. It's New York, it's Gotham City, it's Metropolis, don't matter.
I think I've always thought that's because downtown LA pretty much shuts down from like 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. And so that's when a lot of stuff shoots.
Yeah, it's also just very visually striking. At least this year, the whole California commercial thing makes sense within. But I will say, watching the commercial, and there was a two-parter because there's one also where he just goes to a coffee shop and he orders a coffee. And I forgot the character actor who plays the barista. It's like, Zeus, like the god. And he's like, yeah, that's cool. And it's great.
That
and
was funny.
I have to admit, like, I honestly forgot. I really miss Schwarzenegger comedies.
Well, Schwarzenegger became big because of his sense of humor. Because a lot of those lines in his old action movies that were funny, he ad-libbed them. He made them up. Like I'll be back from The Running Man. Apparently, yeah. I mean, at least the story I've heard is Schwarzenegger made that up. It was scripted. There was a totally different line scripted, and Schwarzenegger just wanted to do that.
I would honestly say if this was a movie, and maybe a more like a Netflix movie or a Hulu movie as opposed to a movie in the theaters, I would absolutely go watch it. I would love to, I really would love to see Schwarzenegger teamed up with Selma Hayek as Zeus and Hera living in suburban Palm Springs. I just felt conceptually like this is just so cool. All right, so what was your next?
I love I liked a lot the Guy Fieri Bud Light hard seltzer commercial.
I like that too. Yeah.
There's some guy at a party and he picks up the Bud Light hard seltzer and he's like, and he has this whole fantasy of like, because he thought it was flavorful. So he has this whole fantasy of some of Guy Fieri's like minions, I guess, dragging him off
Yeah.
to Guy Fieri's Flavor Town, which is an actual place, fantasy place where everybody looks
Yeah.
like Guy Fieri, and Guy Fieri's the mayor because because Guy Fieri has a shtick where he's the mayor of Flavor Town, and he brings the Bud Light Hard Seltzer to Fieri, and Fieri's impressed by how flavorful it is, and it becomes the new big drink in Flavor Town, and everybody's like celebrates, and then he snaps out of it. And he's back at the party, and everybody thinks he's crazy. It's a fun commercial. It's just a fun commercial. Guy Fieri's shaping up to be one of the all-time great TV personalities. He's like one of these guys that just he's the same everywhere. He's the same in every show.
It's so weird too because
he's same on screen and off screen. The guy, like every story I've heard about him, he's like such a nice guy.
It's very funny too because he kind of does look like he's from some sort of crazy ass future. But there is almost like a cartoon anime quality built into the persona of Guy Fieri, so it's genius. The neatest part is as it gets crazier and crazier, and then it cuts back to the guy at the party, and you can tell it's all in his head. It's a strange commercial because if it's all in his head, are they subliminally telling you like drink that hard seltzer? It's gonna get you lit. Like so lit that you're gonna like hallucinate lit. Like I was like, damn, Snoop Dogg's pushing that big lighter for your pot. But damn, I could. So it's weird because the only time I've ever seen an alcohol ad that kind of sells you on the buzz. You know what I'm saying? Which is so wrong that it's right.
Well, I think that is one of the selling points because this was not the only commercial for like a drink in a can, hard drink in a can. And I think they're all like trying to give that sort of angle because they don't want people to think that they've watered down the booze in these drinks.
So the next one I'm going to pick, I feel really just kind of brings home what I am saying about the use of comedy and how much I really like. We didn't get a lot of comedies in the last 2 years. We're really starved for cinematic comedy. So there's the one called Lay's Golden Wet Memories, which puts together a comedy duo of Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd, who have been in 40-Year-Old Version, Knocked Up, and This Is 40. Now, it's interesting to point out that they've never really done a buddy movie together, and yet this was like almost a compilation of all the buddy movies they should have done. The 90s road movie, which of course Rogen would be too young for, the horror movie, the action movie, and they weren't playing other people. They were just leaning into their persona as Seth and Paul.
Yeah, and by the end it turns into a horror comedy, which
is great.
It's completely surprising.
And I love the fact that it's a Jewish wedding. I'm not joking.
Oh, was it? I didn't notice that.
Oh yeah, they're literally he's holding him up there.
Oh, that's right. At the very end, they're holding him in the chair. That's right.
It embraces Judaism very subliminally, but it validates that and it addresses something that's kind of disturbing, which is like, in my opinion, the reason why Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen appear in ensemble films together, interact with each other on films together, but have never done the buddy movies that we're pretending they've done, is because I honestly believe that unless you're Noah Baumbach or Woody Allen or Mel Brooks, regular Hollywood, even what's his face, Paul, help me out, a brain fart. The guy who directed them and Knocked Up.
Oh, I can't remember. But what were you gonna say?
Yeah. Anyway, him, Judd Apatow. Thank you.
Oh, Apatow, yeah.
Right, like who is Jewish, but like in general, I really feel like Hollywood has some weird unspoken rule that you cannot, unless they're part of a comedy team, you can't have two Jewish actors as buddies, and it upsets me to no end. Like I really feel like there's some sort of weird rule. Like Hollywood will never put Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen together because Christian America can't get their heads behind this idea that they're both Jewish. And I don't know. It's this so and so I did feel like, yeah, good. I want to see a real Jewish wedding. I want to see two Jewish guys hanging out, doing cool and interesting stuff, and not hiding their Judaism.
Wait a second, is Paul Rudd Jewish?
Hell yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, of course, you Gentile. And that's what I really liked. I liked not only that it was about if it as a Jew, just kind of like, yeah, I want to see that. Hollywood, take note. Just like Selma Hayek and Schwarzenegger have chemistry, Rudd and Rogen should absolutely be paired up in something. And I love that absurdist ending where he just marries the ghost. I mean, that's genius.
Yeah, it was I don't know who wrote that commercial, but they
Now the downside is I didn't really think about the potato chips. You know, that kind of like the car commercial. No, worse than the car commercial. I actually forgot it. I had to look it up. That was a potato chip commercial.
that's par for the
Uh,
course though for Super Bowl commercials. I mean, the product sometimes gets lost.
and again, people who grew up with Rogan and Rudd are people who watched Clueless, Freaks and Geeks. This is again, it's very clear late millennial Gen X, right? In fact, even age wise, how old is Seth Rogen?
I don't know. I could look it up, but yeah, he's in there.
Rudd's 53. You know, so Rudd's my age, not my age, but he's later in the Gen X. But again, it's that thing where Gen X and late.
Seth is 39.
Yeah, he's a late millennial. So, and actually, that's kind of brilliant casting because you could argue from an advertising perspective, those two guys really represent the two demographics these commercials I really feel are fighting for, which is late millennials and Gen Xers. Now, onto your commercial. What was your next one?
Well, my next one is the Captain Morgan Punch Bowl commercial. I think he's told me he didn't see this one. So
I didn't. So yeah.
So it was a quick commercial. It was beautifully shot. It's kind of like a spoof. You know, it's Captain Morgan is pretending to be advertising a smart punch bowl for your party. Yeah. And, you know, it doesn't really exist. I mean, they're claiming that you can go to the website and try to win one at the end. But they probably don't exist. But the commercial plays it straight. Like, this is a real commercial, a lot of close-ups of the punch bowl and all its smart capabilities. And I don't know. I just like it. It's fun. It's creative. I like it when these advertisers, they get a little bit unserious, you know, and they don't, like Captain Morgan, they're not trying to push. This is a commercial for a product that doesn't even exist. So, so I love it when these advertisers get irreverent, even for their own product.
Yeah, I like that. And alcohol commercials are very popular in Super Bowl. You know, my sister used to work in Super Bowl commercials, and she would tell me that was the most money. I had another friend who was a set who did costume and wardrobe, and she would work them. And you know, Super Bowl commercials are really like these are the big Chloe Award winning commercials. This is where the budgets are bigger. And yeah, I would have liked to have seen it. The next one I picked, again, really drives home this theme, is from Crypto.com. Again, Crypto.com, up until this point, we're just making those really weird, very odd Matt Damon commercials, which I never liked because they were so insincere. Like, be like the Romans and throw all your money in crypto. I mean, no.
Yeah, they got a negative reaction.
Favors the brain. Yeah, that was like, nah, does not convince me. But, you know, LeBron James, and again, this is the beauty of CGI, a 37-year-old, late, you know, aging millennial, loved by Gen Xers, because he was, 18 when he went pro?
He's been around a while.
Yeah, he was 18 when he went pro, so you could easily be I was in my 30s, so I remember. Anyway, my point is he was a hero to all of Gen X as well, because we thought he was a phenom, and he was brilliant and wonderful and has been consistent. But again, it addresses this very metaphysical issue that almost, again, would have been a pretty cool movie, which is, you know, what if you could speak to your younger self about the future?
I don't remember. Do they explain it? I mean, from what I remember, the commercial just starts with old LeBron talking to young LeBron, like he walks into his bedroom and starts talking to him. Do they explain that at all?
No. They're just talking about. There's no like premise. They're just. You assume we've now seen so many of these movies and TV shows. We're just like, yeah, that happened. Yeah, of course, they're all gonna. We all have. I want to make. I'm serious. I know 3 years from now, there's gonna be an app that lets me recreate 17 to 28-year-old Chris Corbell. And I that's just going to be the only one you're going to see. By the way, that CGI version of me in my 20s will become the new co-host of Chris and Randall. Are you watching The Mandalorian? I'm sorry, the Book of Boba Fett?
Yes.
Look, folks, I'm gonna just spoiler it. So give me literally come back in 60 seconds. So you saw Mark Hamill?
Yes, yeah.
Like, okay, so and it's great. He really looks like 28. So yes, now we are living in a world where everybody can basically bring themselves back from 20 years ago. But it's yes, it's really interesting, but really it is. I picked it because I really do feel like the theme of one of the great themes of this Super Bowl is new middle age. People who thought of themselves as young in the last 20 years coming to the realization that old people aren't boomers. They're people who in their late 30s, late 40s, or mid to late 50s, and that our history is now coming to haunt us. The 20th century, the early aughts, is now well behind us, and we're all beginning to reflect. And I actually think LeBron is not an actor. I was actually surprised. He gives a good performance. He plays it. He doesn't play it wacky. This could have been could have been a wacky commercial. After all, in a way, you could argue that Carrie and Myers are doing just that. They're just going back to who they were 30 years ago, using makeup to look like themselves, and just kind of revisiting. Where this is a much more played for realism. And I know it's for crypto, so who cares? But
what do you think the message of the commercial is? Because old LeBron is telling young LeBron that his life is going to be great, and young LeBron is anxious that his life isn't going to be great. Am I summing it up correctly?
Yeah, and then of course old LeBron has to think about his next 20, right? That's the whole point of that commercial,
Is it?
Yeah, that's
All
the
right.
whole point of these crypto commercials are like you gotta have a reason. You should want to invest with us. It went from being fortune favors the brave to like, we're like no different than a stock or a bond, and you're getting older. And there was a number of retirement and investment commercials, and retirement again is this very weird theme. Tom Brady, LeBron. There's this. It's just kind of there's a lot of
Well,
twilight.
all the boomers are starting to retire now too.
Well, no, the boomers retired a long time ago. Gen X is starting to retire.
Well, the
And
boomers just reached retirement age like a year or two ago.
no, no, no. People
Yeah.
my age are retiring. A
Well,
lot of
I know
people
they are,
retire.
but I know they
Well,
are, but
if
but
you're
they're
in your
retiring
50s,
early.
well, no, if you're in your 50s, you probably have an employer which will give you like 25 or 30 or 55 as a retirement point.
Oh yeah,
So
for sure. But I
it
mean,
is
but
it is the
if you're gonna
age
talk
of,
about 65, then the boomers have just really started. It's
also
gonna be the tidal wave coming.
it's the age of retirement planning in the world of investments. So you don't want to go up to a 65 and go, hey, buy some stock. But hey, 55-year-old, 37-year-old, what are you prepared for the new chapter? And they did other commercials like that. What was another commercial you really liked?
Uh, Number two commercial for me, the Quaker Oats that looks like a beer commercial. So it's a Quaker Oats commercial, a commercial for Quaker Oats, but they make it in the style of a beer commercial. They even have this.
Wow.
Have you seen? Did you see it?
No, I must watch it after we're done. That
It's
sounds awesome.
hilarious. They even have the Quaker Oats in like a 6 pack, like a beer.
Wow,
It's
that's
it's
awesome.
it's hilarious. I don't think there's any people in it. It's just the product but yeah, it has the style of a beer commercial, and they even have like a shot of a drop of water, condensation dripping down the side of the Quaker Oats can. It's hilarious.
Any named people in it?
Nope, it's just the product. Again, it's like an irreverent. It's like the Captain Morgan Punch Bowl commercial.
Very
It's an
irreverent.
irreverent commercial. They're having fun with their brand. Because they know Quaker Oats knows. It's like there's gonna be all these like beer commercials and funny commercials and commercials for hip products and so they just went
They're
with it.
embracing that they're hip to be square. Also, I really love it. I haven't seen it, but I get the feeling that you don't forget the product.
I didn't. No, I mean Quaker Oats was it was very memorable to me. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. And we all grew up with Quaker Oats, and I'm not going to force the analogy, but back to crypto. Crypto is really fighting for legitimacy. And I feel like crypto has gone from being, hey, young tech person, don't you want to be hip and cool, to, hey, middle-aged person, does your investment portfolio have crypto? Which is interesting because middle-aged people have historically been an older boomers and Gen X, we get kind of squeamish when it comes to crypto. In fact, we are responsible apparently for a number of our listeners getting their first cryptos because of our episode last year on what is it, ETFs, ATFs,
Oh, NFTs that we did with my
NFT.
brother.
Right. And
People
now
told you
this,
they bought crypto from that?
yeah. So I don't. Where's my commission? Uh, so FTX, which is a competitor, and it's amazing. There was like a lot of people. Crypto is so legit. It's more legit than hard cider or electric cars. Well, it's between electric cars and hard cider. It's a little more legit than hard cider, and not yet as legit as an electric car. So it's called Don't Miss Out, and it's with Larry David, and it's Larry David as Larry David throughout history. And it's all these great moments in history where things happen, and Larry characters like, oh, you know, like did you see this one?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so that's one of the
The
standouts.
wheel, well, like the wheel, the bagel is round. You can eat that, Cool. Well, we're human beings. We don't go to the bathroom indoors. Oh, that's a pretty good one. When he got up to the coffee, he didn't like it. He says, I feel what did he say? I feel a big
He says he feels jittery and he has to do a big job or something.
I feel a big job coming on. Like, whoa! Like there is no way he did not write that commercial.
You think so? No, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
no, it has to be.
I
No.
will say, Larry,
I think he wrote that commercial.
I will
It
say,
would be the first time that a comedian wrote their own commercial.
well,
Newhart used to do that.
I will say that Larry David is, he really, I mean, he's got a great sense of humor. He really knows how words should be working on the screen. I mean, if it wasn't perfectly written the first time, he would have changed it, obviously. So,
Yeah, I feel like it definitely has his imprint. Sure, it just is the way the jokes work. You're gonna let the stupid people vote, or there's that great one where he's at Sony and he's arguing in Japanese.
hey, who
I
was
love
he?
it.
Who was he playing? Do you know? Was he playing in the Founding Fathers segment? Was he playing somebody specific?
No, he was playing Larry David,
Oh, okay, all right.
and then he
'Cause
gets kicked out like he always. So
that's true.
I mean, it was so curb. I have never, I've rarely seen something that was done in a Super Bowl commercial that borrowed from something like a movie or a TV show that so captured the essence of the TV show. But someone who's just gone through an entire season of Curb and has got, I need my Larry David fix. I will tell you this: you can find it on YouTube, and maybe we can, if you're good, we'll list it here at the bottom of Facebook. But there's an extended cut where you see lots of other places in history where Larry goes, I don't know.
I may have seen it. Yeah, that's good. It's good.
And
It's
and
very
and
good.
it's actually it is smart advertising because crypto knows that people go, I don't know. I don't think it's such a great idea. And their whole ad is don't be like Larry. Don't be like, you know what? Because you don't want to be like Larry.
Right. They're trying to position crypto as the next modern technology, and so get on board.
Which is another interesting way of being better than the Matt Damon ad. You know what I'm saying? The Matt Damon's like, hey, you're a sucker. Fortune favors the brave. Whereas like the LeBron one, that's more like, well, hey, what are you going to do about your future? But this one takes an argument, satirizes it, and instead of makes a fake stupid person, they choose America's favorite naysayer. And again, this one is cool because Larry is well into he's a boomer without apology. So if crypto is going after boomers who have retirement money, want to do something interesting, that was an incredibly smart choice. And if they're going for any generation younger, it's an incredibly smart choice since everybody younger than Larry always considers Larry to be clearly in the wrong.
Well, that's his persona he's created over the
And
years.
I've never seen Larry David do a commercial for anything. So I really feel like they must have given him a lot of creative control because and anytime a celebrity does these commercials, especially crypto, you could argue it's bad for the brand. Matt Damon really damaged the brand of Matt Damon when he does these crypto commercials. I don't really feel that LeBron has damaged the brand of LeBron because A, it's a very cool commercial, And B, he's freaking LeBron James. And by the way, how interesting it is to have a basketball legend doing a commercial at the Super Bowl. That's something you don't normally see. So now it's time for our favorites. Randall, share with me your favorite
Well, I think
commercial of 2022.
the number one commercial I thought that was the best. We're just saying it's the best, right? Is the Irish Spring commercial. So in this commercial, it's for the soap Irish Spring, and I guess I read somewhere this is their very first Super Bowl commercial of all time, and they knocked it out of the park. It's hilarious. So there's a bunch of like people, probably Irish people, hanging out in an Irish spring. You know, it's like it's all green and outdoorsy, and they're all wearing traditional clothing, and some guys wandering through the forest. He happens upon them, and and you know they're both shocked at each other, and then they tell him he's got to he's not he realizes there's some kind of weird cult, and they like to be clean. Okay, they don't want he smells bad, you know, and they need to cleanse him. And like it looks like one of these cult movies, right, where like
Wow.
the cult's about to kill him, you
Oh
know,
my
and there's
God.
ominous music,
Oh my God.
and they grab him, and they're lowering. In the next shot, they're lowering him into this like looks like this well, and
Oh
you
my
don't know
God.
what's gonna happen to him in there.
Like the Wicker Man.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a cult
Or
movie, like The Wicker Man.
Midsummer. Yeah.
Right, Midsommar, exactly. So then,
Oh, jeez.
so then they're lowering him, and he's got this look of fear on his face, and then you cut to him like just prancing out in the woods with the rest of the people, all clean, and now he's happy because he's clean.
Okay, as soon as we're done, I'm gonna watch that commercial.
It's really funny.
Randall, you've got to post that commercial, please. Please let everyone at
All
least
right,
see
I'll
that.
put links to all these commercials.
Yeah,
That was really good.
I gotta watch it. I gotta. Okay, so first off, I'm sorry I missed it. It sounds amazing, and I saw the Old Spice one, which I think is what I thought you were talking about, which is pretty cool if you're a fan of The Witcher or that period. It's kind of neat. It's not probably as good as the one you picked, but I liked it. But my favorite comes from Budweiser. Now, a little bit about Budweiser. Budweiser last year chose not to put any ads in the Super Bowl because it was the first full year of the lockdown, and they took all their money and they donated it to COVID relief, which was awesome. And it was the first time there hadn't been a Budweiser commercial in forever. And the Budweiser, you know, ever since like the 80s, they've always had the Clydesdale. That is their brand. And it's interesting because, and this is really branding, not advertising, because, you know, a horse is not really, there's no symbolic relationship between horse and beer, you know, and the Clydesdale is not particularly even a German, it doesn't, I've never felt like there was a real connection, but whenever I see a Clydesdale, I always think of Budweiser, which is effective branding. Branding isn't so much getting you to buy a product, that's advertising. Branding is a form of marketing, which is to make you form associations. So what I like about Budweiser's commercials is this is not a commercial to sell Budweiser. This is a commercial to once again remind you of the associations that they want you to have with the product. Which is kind of good because, to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of the beer. So a Clydesdale's journey, ostensibly, is about it takes place out in the West, a man who owns a singular Clydesdale. This is not like the traditional Budweiser commercial where you see the Budweiser Clydesdales in unison on a carriage, but just one guy who owns one and a dog. They're out in the West, and the Clydesdale jumps. He hurts his leg. We see him in the stable. We watch the dog's point of view on what happens. A doctor comes, a woman doctor, and I think she might even be a Native American, which is great for diversity. Goes up to the horse owner. Why do I say that? My point is, she goes up to the horse. They exchange a beer while they're waiting out the night on this horse. It's the only time we actually ever see a Budweiser being exchanged. And then we watch again, really from the point of view of the dog. The horse does get better, starts to gallop, regains its strength. And the line is, you know, something like, I wrote that written down, but that would have been smart. No, I wrote it down. In the home of the brave, down never means out. And it's really the only ad I even saw that referenced COVID or the pandemic, we were all like, nope, we'll never speak of that again. And I get it in that it's not explicit. Again, it's a very subtle commercial for the product. It's a very subtle commercial for the themes of renewal and coming out of a pandemic. And
Yeah, it's almost like
go
the
ahead.
theme of the whole show, right? I mean, of all these, I mean, there's
Yeah,
a tone of optimism of like we're gonna be coming back,
yeah,
everything's gonna get better.
yeah. And it isn't really related to getting older or middle age or any generations. But what I love about it is it's shot almost. It reminds me of the Springsteen commercial I liked last year that
I
everyone.
was thinking the same thing.
But
It felt similar to the Springsteen, yeah.
yeah, it's a story told in the American West. It's a story told mostly in exteriors. The product is not that important. It feels like a film, and the choice of not just having the perspective of us, the owner and the animal, but also the perspective of the dog, really works. And I've watched it now a number of times, and I thought to myself, ostensibly speaking, if I was at a short film festival and I did not know this was an ad for Budweiser, I would say this is a great short film because it does all the things you want in a short film. It tells the story in pictures. There's a beginning, a middle, and end. There's stakes. There's change. There's a lot of different elements in its symbolism, tone. It's a very fully realized. And then I found out who directed it, and I would argue probably conceived of it, which is the 2021 Academy Award winning director, Chloe Zhao. And it's funny because I've seen Nomadland and I've seen The Internals, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of either of them. But I will admit, both films have these great sequences out in the American West, and they are gorgeous. And I know that she has done quite a few films like that in her native China, which I really should see. And I will say that, whenever you have a filmmaker directing a Super Bowl ad, I think of Ridley Scott's ad of 1984 for Apple. They bring something to the game, metaphorically and literally, that no one else does. And I love when filmmakers make commercials, and I love when the commercial, God only knows what the budget was, but it's got to have been sky high. I just love when the commercial is cinema and it's just gorgeous. And yes, I do believe there must be many associations of, as you said, optimism, recovery, freedom, all of these wonderful emotions that we can associate with the Budweiser. It doesn't make us buy the Budweiser. It makes us maybe buy the Budweiser in only that if we want those feelings, it's now part of the language of our feelings. But it's just great. It's great aesthetically. It's just a great work, and it does what it's supposed to do. It affects an emotional response, tells a story, and yet at the same time, I do at the end realize this is for Budweiser. It doesn't hide the product. It hides the product, but at the end, when the product comes around, it comes around in a very spiritual manner, meaning it's the ethos of happiness and recovery. I know I'm reading a hell of a lot into that, but speaking of Oscars, next week, we're going to talk about the Oscar nominations. So hopefully you'll join us for that. Until then, happy Super Bowl, everyone. You had a good time, Randall? Was it good? Anything I wanted to say before we cut?
Nope. Had a great Super Bowl.
Had a great Super Bowl. All right, go Rams. Go Rams. Our native hometown winners. Yay! Bye.
Bye.